We are here with Laura Pauley, the author of My Summer Bump and her latest book, My Asian Summer. Laura, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me down today.
No problem at all. Laura's just done a book reading and a talk about her book with a few selected people that came along, and we're going to have a little chat. So basically, My Asian Summer, explain what it's about.
So, when my daughter was 5 years old, I decided to take her backpacking around Asia.
Cool.
And this is the story of our adventure.
Awesome. How long did you go for?
We went for 6 weeks. It was the most time I could get off of work.
Sure.
Like a normal person, have to go to work, can't just take a year out, unfortunately. So 6 weeks was the length of the trip, but we did enough to probably justify a 3-month trip.
Yeah. I mean, 6 weeks, it's a long time. It's longer than most 2-week holidays, so you can get a lot done.
You can get a lot done, and what we did is we did activities day and night, so that we really did cram a lot in.
Wow.
If I had more time, I probably would have done more bus journeys than flights, but
Sure.
enabled for us to get around all these different countries, we did have to fly quite a lot.
Sure.
But it's just saving time, flying in the night, save a few hours instead of wasting a day.
So what countries did you go to?
So we went to Hong Kong, we did Thailand, we did Chiang Mai, Bangkok, all the South Islands, Cambodia, top to bottom, and then into Vietnam.
Oh wow, so again, quite a selection.
Quite a selection, and very different countries as well, although people may think that they're very similar because they're quite next to each other, they're not. Each of them are very different with their pros and their cons. Some of them I had been to before. I've been to Thailand before, for example.
Sure.
I'd never been to Cambodia before.
Yeah.
Cambodia was not what I expected at all.
Okay.
I found it to be very untouched, a bit like how Thailand was 10-15 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, I loved Cambodia. Really opened my eyes to a variety of things that I didn't know before travelling.
Sure. What made you want to travel for that length of time with your daughter, who was how old at the time?
She was 5 at the time. A couple of things. We're from a very small fishing village, so summer at the time wasn't used to seeing anyone from a different culture to her own.
Sure.
So I kind of wanted to open her eyes up to the world that was outside of our fishing village.
Yeah.
People look different to you, they eat different foods, they live in different houses, different language, different culture. And I think that I really did that. On our trip we stayed with local families, so it really did throw us out of our comfort zone. For example, we wouldn't always have an option of what we ate, so we were served like noodles and chicken for breakfast, which for a Western child, they're like, this is dinner, why am I eating dinner?
I've never had noodles for breakfast.
No, and it was little things like that, and a lot of the places we went to, we didn't have cutlery. So before I went, I had to make sure that she could eat with chopsticks. Spice is another thing. Obviously in Asia, their food is that much spicier than our food.
Sure.
So I had to get her used to spice as well. So all these little things, I really had to think about before I went and, get her used to them before travelling.
That's crazy. I think a lot of people have said that the word I've heard today is you were very brave to do it. Thinking back, do you consider yourself brave or being brave to do it?
I don't think so. I just think that sometimes you've got to live a little. And, life is just so short. It really is short. You just need to just think, do you know what? I'll take the rough with the smooth. If something bad happens, pick myself up, move straight on.
Sure.
It's the only way that you're going to really experience these countries, because if you go to these countries and you just stay in all nice hotels, as great as that is, you're not actually seeing a slice of life. But what I would say is if you're travelling with a child, the best way to do is to balance it. So we stayed in like a really nice hotel, and then we went rustic. Then we had a nice hotel, then we went rustic. By doing that, it gives you that bit of sanity in between.
Yeah.
You don't feel really rough. So like we would have like 3 days in the jungle, and then you would feel really rough. You'd feel a bit sleep deprived. You'd feel dirty, like you just want to have a good wash.
Sure.
But then if you go and stay in a nice hotel for 2 nights, and then you're ready to start it again the next day.
Yeah, that's good advice. So writing the book, what's your background? Do you have a background in writing? Obviously this is your second book, but you did this amazing journey, but not everyone would want to put it into a book or even think they could put it into a book.
Yeah.
How did you approach the book? What did you find easy? What did you find hard about doing it?
Okay, well, I worked as a reporter for not long, about a year, before I started to write my first book. My first book was my diary throughout my pregnancy.
Sure.
And then at the end of my pregnancy, I reread the diary back and thought, this book can really help someone that's going through what I'm going through.
Sure.
Because I went through my pregnancy on my own. So that's how the writing kind of started in memoirs. After that first book, I was offered a column in a local regional paper, and it just documented my life as a single crazy mum at the age of 23.
Sure.
So I did that for 18 months, just continuing my story with Summer. And then when Summer was 5, obviously decided to take her travelling. And then everyone was saying to me, like, where's the next chapter of your book? Because we've had the first book of your pregnancy. We had 18 months of your columns, which were quite humorous, documenting all the silly things that I did as a young mum that, I've never got up in the night and done this with kids with the bottles and all of that sort of stuff. And so I thought, do you know what? The Asia trip would make a great follow-up. 5 years later, where are we? We're in Asia backpacking. It's a bit like a film, really, if you think of it in segments, you know. So that's kind of where it came from. No, I'm completely new to writing, really. I mean, other than obviously interviewing people as a journalist, but that's very different to writing a book. It's a totally different industry. But you learn things as you go along. And between my first book and my second book, I've had a 10-year gap. So that 10 years has enabled me to learn quite a lot about how you go about writing a book and whether you're better off doing traditional publishing or self-publishing.
Would you have any advice for someone who wants to become an author? Certainly if they were going down the self-publish route that a lot of writers are thinking about today. Any sort of do's, don'ts, do's, wish someone had told you that when you started that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be very careful when you self-publish that you do go with a self-publisher, not a vanity publisher.
Yes.
There's a big difference between them, and you've really got to do your research to discover who are the good ones and maybe who are not the good ones. You need to make sure that you actually find out about the services that they offer and what you can actually do yourself through your own network of friends. So some people throw so much money at self-publishing because they'll approach a self-publisher and they'll offer a service of editing, cover design, this, that, and all these things cost crazy money. Whereas if you look at your own network of friends or you do a bit of networking in general, you could get those services a lot cheaper and actually more tailored to you. So, for example, my first book, my friend edited it for me because she was a journalist. My second book, I found an editor who was quite new into her career, so she wanted to use the book as her benchmark to sell herself. So by doing that, I'm enabling her to build up a profile, and she's also helping me by editing for me.
And she's not charging the rates that
absolutely, yeah. And then with my illustrations, I had a friend who actually was an art teacher, so she did my illustrations for me, and then equally she can now use them as her own benchmark. So it's about thinking outside of the box, like, right, who do I know and what skills do they have? Or just networking on social media. I mean, if there was ever a time to self-publish, it's now. Because I feel that you don't need to go down the traditional route because you have the world of social media. So if you can really think about your marketing and, getting it out there to different people, you can actually pretty much do everything yourself.
Yeah.
You don't need a traditional publisher to print 1,000 books for you.
Sure.
And then it's about thinking about things to keep the cost down of the book. So for example, if I put photographs in this book, the cover price of the book would have gone sky high. So instead what we did is I got the illustrator and she drew my photographs.
Interesting.
And then it keeps the cover price down. And then when you look at the different publishing packages you can get, majority of them include sketches anyway. So I had 20 sketches included, but I negotiated with them to make it 50. So if you were reading this book, you don't need an actual photograph. Like if you used to look at that picture of Summer asleep, that's no different to the photograph, and that hasn't cost me anything.
Sure.
And like I said, I negotiated with them so that I've got 50 of these, and it really makes the story come alive having these illustrations in there.
As I said, it makes a huge difference on the cost.
Absolutely. If I put photographs in here, this book would do about £20 as opposed to £12.99.
Yeah. I suppose, what's the biggest problem with releasing a book today? in this market with the internet and everything else, it's all positive. What's the biggest hurdle for new authors?
I would say the biggest hurdle is yourself. Because I think people can be over ambitious and they could beat themselves up. So if you was to approach a number of literary agents or publishers and you get turned down, it's quite easy to think, oh, I'm rubbish, my book is rubbish, and give up. Whereas actually, like for me, for example, with this book, I didn't even bother approaching anyone. I went in straight away with the mindset that I can do this all by myself. So if you set yourself ambitious targets and you don't get defeated by the knockbacks, because you don't need these big author houses and things, you can do it yourself. So yeah, I would say yourself, and just not letting these knockbacks from the literary agents knock your confidence, because you can market this book yourself, you can get it out there, and nobody knows your book better than what you know yourself.
Sure. Last question, we were talking about before we started filming about the value of having another person edit it.
Yes.
How much help has the editor that you used gave you in terms of the production of this book, writing the book, getting it ready to publish?
I can confidently say that this book would be nowhere near the calibre that it is if it was not for my editor. She really made me think about my structure of sentences, little things, like she would read a sentence and she would notice that I've overused a word a number of times, and she would say, you do realise you've used that word like 50 times in the last chapter, and I was like, no I haven't. She said, yes you have, I've highlighted it, here you are. And then it's only when you realise, you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that, I didn't notice that. Then little things like the descriptions and stuff, so she would read a sentence and she'd say to me, you're not really explaining it very well, like you're in this market, explain to me, what can you smell? So I'm like, oh, I remember I could smell this horrible like insecty smell, and what it was because they were cooking mosquitoes right next to me. She's like, well, explain that then.
Yeah.
Or pollution, or explain that smell of pollution. How did it make you feel? Well, it made me feel quite sick actually. Right, well, put it in there, it made me feel sick. And then before you know it, she's made you think about what you can see, what you can smell, the dialogue that then bounces off that, because suddenly there's this smell, and then Summer is turning to me saying, Mummy, this stinks, what is that smell? And then before you know it, you can then create like a comical scene based on that. And it's those little things where I probably wouldn't have even thought of if she hadn't have pointed it out.
Sure. I totally understand that. Where can people who are interested in just yourself, in the book, where can people get the book, other than BookPotato.org, and where can they follow you?
So the book's available from any bookstore. Obviously it comes down to BookPotato down here in Leatherhead, or you could go on Amazon. It's always nice to buy it from a bookstore, especially supporting like the independent bookstores like yourself.
Sure.
Because it's got an ISBN, you can go anywhere and just give my name, or Pauley, or the name of the book, My Asian Summer. But if for convenience, then yeah, you can go on Amazon.
Sure.
But yeah, if you're in Leatherhead, then come down to BookPotato. And yeah, buy the book.
And you're on social media?
On social media, yeah. So Instagram is probably the best one.
Okay.
And I've got lots of hashtags, so hashtag My Asian Summer. There's a hashtag My Asian Summer Illustrations, hashtag My Asian Summer Edits, where you can really follow the journey of each segment. There's another one for the book launch, because when I did the book launch, I created like a big Asian party for just the neighbourhood of Chichester. And so again, if somebody was an aspiring author and they wanted to know about editing, illustrations, how to create a book launch, if you follow those tags, you can see like the story behind each of those segments.
Fantastic. Laura, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.